That's the fat mess we have to tolerate. Those were the exact words my own daughter, Jasmine, shouted at her wedding while pointing straight at me. She said it loudly, without hesitation, in front of her new husband's rich and powerful family. The grand ballroom in Charlotte, North Carolina, filled with cruel laughter. Nearly 200 guests stared at me with open disgust, as if I didn't belong there at all, like some stray animal that had wandered into the most elegant event of the year. My face burned with shame. My hands shook as I held the small wedding gift I had wrapped so carefully with my limited money. Then something happened that changed everything. Mr. Sterling, the groom's father, a well-dressed man in a perfectly tailored suit, had been laughing along with the others. Suddenly, he stopped. His smile disappeared. His eyes locked onto my face, frozen in shock. "Wait," he whispered, stepping closer to me while the rest of the room still sneered. "Aren't you my new boss? My name is Eleanor Baines, but everyone calls me Ellie. I am 66 years old, and for over 30 years, I lived like I didn't exist. After my husband died in a terrible accident when Jasmine was only 12, I became invisible. I was the woman who cleaned office buildings before sunrise. The woman who took 3 different buses just to get to work. The woman who bought second-hand clothes and counted every dollar before spending it. Jasmine grew up embarrassed by me, by my job, by my rough hands that smelled of cleaning chemicals, by my old shoes squeaking across shiny corporate floors where I worked night after night. That's the fat mess we have to tolerate. Those were the exact words my own daughter, Jasmine, shouted at her wedding while pointing straight at me. She said it loudly, without hesitation, in front of her new husband's rich and powerful family. The grand ballroom in Charlotte, North Carolina, filled with cruel laughter. Nearly 200 guests stared at me with open disgust, as if I didn't belong there at all, like some stray animal that had wandered into the most elegant event of the year. My face burned with shame. My hands shook as I held the small wedding gift I had wrapped so carefully with my limited money. Then something happened that changed everything. Mr. Sterling, the groom's father, a well-dressed man in a perfectly tailored suit, had been laughing along with the others. Suddenly, he stopped. His smile disappeared. His eyes locked onto my face, frozen in shock. "Wait," he whispered, stepping closer to me while the rest of the room still sneered. "Aren't you my new boss? My name is Eleanor Baines, but everyone calls me Ellie. I am 66 years old, and for over 30 years, I lived like I didn't exist. After my husband died in a terrible accident when Jasmine was only 12, I became invisible. I was the woman who cleaned office buildings before sunrise. The woman who took 3 different buses just to get to work. The woman who bought second-hand clothes and counted every dollar before spending it. Jasmine grew up embarrassed by me, by my job, by my rough hands that smelled of cleaning chemicals, by my old shoes squeaking across shiny corporate floors where I worked night after night. "Ma'am," Mr. Sterling whispered, his hands shaking as he pulled out his phone to confirm what he already knew. Is it really you?" The woman they mocked. The woman they shamed. Was the woman who now controlled his company, and his family's future. And there I stood. Ellie the invisible. Ellie the woman they called names. Holding my small gift wrapped in cheap paper, knowing my life was about to change forever. After decades of silence, my moment had finally arrived. The look in Mr. Sterling's eyes was like watching a puzzle come together, piece by piece. His fingers shook as he scrolled through his phone, urgently searching for the corporate sale emails. I could hear his uneven breathing as he compared the profile photo of E.J. Beaumont, CEO, with me, the woman standing in front of him in a $30 wine-colored dress. "My God," he whispered. Those words cut through the celebration like a knife. You're the one who bought Sterling Corporation." Jasmine rushed toward us, her heels striking the marble floor sharply. "What are you talking about, Mr. Sterling?" she asked in a fake sweet voice. "This is my mother, Eleanor. The one I told you about, the one who cleans buildings." She laughed nervously, but her eyes kept darting between him and me, trying to understand what was happening. My heart pounded so loudly I thought everyone could hear it. For 20 years, I had protected this secret like buried treasure. Every night after cleaning offices, I sat at my small second-hand desk and managed multi-million-dollar deals. I carried 3 phones, one personal that Jasmine knew about, one business phone for serious calls, and a third used only for the most sensitive matters. I had built a web of shell companies, offshore accounts, and corporate identities so complex that even top accountants would have struggled to trace it back to me. Mr. Sterling's company had been bleeding money for months, $3 million in debt, lawsuits from employees, broken contracts. When my legal team brought me the opportunity to buy it, I didn't just see losses on paper. I saw loyal workers and families who didn't deserve to suffer because of bad leadership. I paid $45 million not for the company itself, but to save 600 jobs. Mr. Sterling, you're frightening me, Jasmine said, her voice no longer confident. What does my mother have to do with your company? Devin, her new husband, stepped closer, nervously fixing his tie. He was young, handsome, and kind, but not experienced enough to understand what was unfolding. Mr. Sterling looked straight at me. In his eyes, respect replaced the mockery from moments earlier. Miss Beaumont, he said formally, his voice loud enough for nearby guests to hear. I want to thank you personally for saving my family's company. Without you, hundreds of employees would have lost their jobs this week. The silence was unbearable. Jasmine froze, her mouth slightly open. Miss Beaumont, she repeated. My mother is Baines. Her voice rose, drawing attention. Guests began gathering around us, whispering. I remained silent. For years, silence had been my shield. And now, each quiet second cracked the perfect image Jasmine had built for herself. I saw her remembering every insult, every lie, every moment she pretended I didn't exist. Mom, she whispered at last. Is what he's saying true? Her eyes held confusion, hope, and something darker. Greed. I could see her calculating what this might mean for her future. The guests murmured around us. She's rich? Jasmine's mother? She always looked so poor. The irony burned. Mr. Sterling held out his hand to me. Allow me to introduce her properly, he said. This is Eleanor Baines, the businesswoman who saved my company and the jobs of 600 people. It was finally my moment. After years of hiding behind legal names and representatives, after being treated as nothing by my own daughter, I could speak. But not in the way Jasmine expected. Mr. Sterling, I said calmly, I appreciate your words, but there's a misunderstanding. Hope rushed into Jasmine's eyes. She thought I was about to deny everything. I didn't buy your company for recognition, I continued. I did it because it was the right thing to do. I turned and looked directly at my daughter. It's something you learn after watching too much unnecessary suffering in the world. I never confirmed the truth. But I didn't deny it either. I planted doubt. And it began to torture her. 4 days after the wedding, Jasmine called nonstop. First came sweet messages pretending concern. Mommy, are you okay? You looked so nervous. Then the questions. Did you know Mr. Sterling before? Then desperation. You need to tell me the truth. I kept my routine. Every morning at 5, I woke up in my small working-class apartment. Coffee. Toast. Cleaning uniform. 3 buses to work. What Jasmine didn't know was that during those rides, I was directing a $200 million operation from my corporate phone. On Tuesday night, she showed up unannounced. I heard her struggling with the old building lock, cursing under her breath. When she reached my door, she wore an ivory cashmere coat worth more than 6 months of my rent. Her expensive shoes looked absurd in the worn hallway. Mom, we need to talk, she said, sitting on my thrift store sofa and scanning the room with quiet disgust. I can't stop thinking about the wedding. Mr. Sterling respected you. I poured myself tea and sat across from her in my old chair, the one I had fixed myself years ago. Your wedding was beautiful, I said gently. Devin seems like a good man. Don't change the subject, she snapped. He said you're Beaumont. He said you bought his company. Is it true? Her voice broke. I sipped my tea slowly. Jasmine, look at me. Do you really believe a woman who cleans toilets, wears discount clothes, and lives here could be a millionaire? I held out my hands. These hands scrub floors. Do they look like a CEO's hands? But I saw it in her eyes. Suspicion. Then explain, she said quietly, why he called you Miss Beaumont, and why he looked at you like you mattered. It was time to give Jasmine exactly what she needed to torment herself. Maybe, I said slowly, choosing my words carefully, Mr. Sterling confused me with someone else. Or perhaps, I paused, letting the silence work, I reminded him of someone from his business past. Men his age sometimes see things that aren't really there. It wasn't a lie. But it wasn't the whole truth either. And Jasmine, paranoid, greedy, and restless, filled in the gaps all on her own. But what if he wasn't confused, she whispered, mostly to herself. What if you really do have money hidden somewhere? From that moment on, she became obsessed. Over the next few days, Jasmine started showing up without warning, at strange hours. She scanned my apartment when she thought I wasn't paying attention. One afternoon, I caught her digging through my desk while I was cooking. I was just looking for a pen, she said quickly. I knew she had been reading my papers. What she didn't know was that everything important was locked safely in a deposit box at the city's most exclusive bank. My apartment held exactly what it appeared to hold: utility bills, grocery receipts, old magazines, library books. But I had planted a few false clues. A bank receipt showing a $300 deposit, slightly smudged, as if altered. A phone number scribbled on paper that looked corporate but actually belonged to a pizza place. On Friday, Jasmine arrived with Devin. It was the first time my son-in-law had ever been inside my apartment. He stood awkwardly, trying not to look uncomfortable as he searched for a place to sit. Ms. Baines, he said politely. Jasmine told me about the confusion at the wedding. My father has been very unsettled ever since. He insists you look familiar in a professional way. Jasmine perched on the edge of the sofa, her eyes constantly moving around the room. Devin thinks we should clear this misunderstanding, she said. But her tone made it clear, she didn't want clarity. She wanted confirmation. What kind of clarification? I asked calmly, though inside I felt like I was playing chess. Devin hesitated. The company was bought by a woman named E.J. Beaumont. We wondered if you might know her, or if there's some family connection. Jasmine leaned forward, eyes shining. Baines is a very common name, I said simply. If Mr. Sterling wants to meet the buyer, he can ask his lawyers to arrange it. I don't see why someone would personally thank another person for a business deal. Jasmine suddenly burst out, because she saved hundreds of jobs. Because she paid more than the company was worth. She stopped herself too late. I saw it clearly then, she had been investigating. Pressuring Devin. Gathering pieces. I said nothing. I just sipped my cheap tea and watched her. For the first time since the wedding, I saw fear in her eyes. Fear of being wrong. And fear of being right. That fear turned into obsession. Her visits became more frequent. More invasive. She asked questions disguised as concern. Mom, don't you ever want a better place? A car instead of buses? One rainy afternoon, I found her sitting on the building steps. She had waited for hours, soaked, makeup ruined. I need the truth, she said, her voice breaking. Everyone thinks I'm imagining things, but I know something doesn't add up. I brought her inside and made tea. She trembled on the sofa, vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen in years. I hired a private investigator, she confessed. My heart skipped, but I stayed calm. And what did he find? I asked. Nothing, she whispered. Beaumont is like a ghost. Companies in 12 countries. No public photos. No interviews. No appearances. Even the detective said he's never seen anyone so careful. I leaned forward. And that made you suspicious of me? She nodded slowly. You cleaned those offices. You heard things. Learned things. If that were true, I said gently, don't you think our life would have been better when you were young? She shook her head. Maybe hiding was safer. When I returned from the kitchen, I found her staring at my finance books. Why do you have these? She demanded. They're cheap, I said. And after years of hearing business talk, I got curious. Not a lie. Just not the full truth. Finally, she broke. Mom, if you have money, any money, we need help. Devin and I are drowning. That was my opening. How much do you owe? I asked softly. She covered her face. $600,000. Credit cards. Mortgage. Loans. Wedding expenses. To me, it was nothing. To them, it was ruin. I thought maybe, she said through tears, you could lend us something. I looked at her quietly. If I had that kind of money, I asked, do you really think you'd be begging me now, after humiliating me in front of 200 people? She collapsed into tears. I'm sorry, Mom. I was horrible. But you're the only one I can trust. I took her hands. If I really were a millionaire, I asked, what would that change about you? She hesitated. It would save us, but it would also mean I'd been the worst daughter imaginable. Then she looked at me sharply. Are you E.J. Beaumont or not? I walked to the window. Imagine the answer was yes, I said. What would that say about you? Her face strained. It would mean I'm a monster. Then her eyes hardened. But it would also mean you lied to me. There she was again. So, I said calmly, you'd prefer that I truly be poor? She fell silent. Finally, she whispered, I just want to know if there's any chance we can survive this. I went to my room and returned with an old shoebox. I set it on the table. There's something I've never shown you, I said, opening it slowly. Inside were old papers, photos, and documents, things I had prepared for this exact moment. I pulled out a photograph taken 15 years ago. It showed me walking out of an elegant corporate building. I was dressed plainly, but the luxury of the building behind me was impossible to miss. A coworker took this, I said calmly. That part was a lie. That day, I had been cleaning the offices of Beaumont International Corporation. I watched Jasmine's eyes lock onto the name visible in the photo. Beaumont, she whispered, holding the picture with trembling fingers. You worked for a Beaumont company. Her mind raced, connecting the dots I had carefully scattered. Next, I removed another paper from the box, a 12-year-old cleaning services pay stub. I had altered the employer's name to read Beaumont Enterprise. I worked for them for years, I said. Then I paused. Until I had to quit, for personal reasons. Jasmine stared at the document like it was a treasure map. Personal reasons, she whispered. What kind of reason makes someone leave a stable job? This was the most delicate moment. I needed something believable, true enough to explain everything, but vague enough to protect the mystery. There were irregularities, I said quietly. Things I saw while cleaning at night. Conversations I overheard. I sat down heavily, as if the memory weighed on me. One night, the CEO asked me to stay late for a private meeting. Jasmine's eyes widened. She asked you to be a witness? Her imagination filled in the gaps exactly as I hoped. I can't talk about it, I said, pretending to be nervous. I signed a non-disclosure agreement. But there are reasons why some people prefer my identity to remain unknown. I placed the documents back in the box. Jasmine followed every movement with hungry eyes. Mom, she said urgently, are you saying you know a secret about E.J. Beaumont? That you worked directly for her? She leaned forward. Is that why Mr. Sterling recognized you? Because you were in important meetings? I didn't answer. My silence spoke louder than words. I watched her build her own theory, that I had seen something powerful, that I had been paid for my silence, Maybe even that blackmail was involved. None of it was true, but it explained everything she couldn't otherwise understand. "Did they give you money?" she asked. "Compensation for keeping quiet?" Her eyes shone with hope, and something darker. "Jasmine," I said firmly, "that part of my life is complicated. Powerful people were involved. Legal agreements. Consequences that could hurt more than just us." I stood and began putting the box away. "But," I added calmly, "if you're truly in financial trouble, maybe there's something I can do." She jumped to her feet. "What kind of something?" she demanded. "Do you have access to money? Can you get a loan? Do you know someone who can help us?" "I can make some calls," I said evenly. "There are people who owe me favors. But I'd need to know exactly how much you need, and why." $600,000, she said instantly. 600,000 to clear everything. Her hands shook. "That's a serious amount," I replied. "I'd have to contact people who value privacy. And you'd need to understand the seriousness of what I'd be risking." She nodded desperately. "We understand. This is our life." Then suspicion crossed her face. "But what would you have to do in return?" "That," I said quietly, "depends on how much you're willing to risk to save your future." I left her drowning in anticipation. For the next 3 days, Jasmine called me every 2 hours. Gratitude turned to anxiety, then obsession. "Did you make the calls? When will we know? Should Devin and I come to a meeting?" By Friday night, I decided it was time for the next step. "Come to my apartment tomorrow at 7, I told her. "And don't tell anyone, especially Devin's family." When they arrived Saturday night, Jasmine was dressed in black like she was attending a formal event. Devin looked nervous, adjusting his tie, clearly unsure what he had walked into. "Before we started, I said firmly, what we discussed tonight cannot leave this room. Powerful people are involved." Devin nodded. "We appreciate any help, Ms. Baines. But we don't want to cause you trouble." Such a kind young man, so different from his wife. "How much has Jasmine told you?" I asked. "She said you worked for an important company and know people who might help us get a loan." A carefully edited truth. "It's more complicated than that," I said, closing the curtains theatrically. "For years, I cleaned offices at one of the most powerful companies in the country. But I didn't just clean. I listened. I observed. I reported." Jasmine leaned forward. "Reported to whom?" "To Beaumont herself." The silence was unbearable. Devin looked confused. "You mean, like a private investigator?" "For over 15 years, I said calmly, my official job was cleaning. My real job was being her eyes and ears." It was a lie, carefully wrapped in truth. Jasmine turned pale, her hands shaking. "You worked directly for E.J. Beaumont?" "Yes," I said quietly. And I watched the realization tear through her, knowing the hook was now set. "It was more than that," I said quietly, deciding to give Jasmine exactly what she had been waiting for. "During those years, E.J. Beaumont compensated me very generously for my discretion. And when I left that work, I made sure I had enough to live comfortably for the rest of my life." Jasmine practically jumped out of her seat. "How much?" she asked bluntly. "How much money do you have?" Her mask of daughterly concern was gone. What replaced it was pure greed, and even though I expected it, it still hurt to see. "Enough," I replied calmly, "to solve your financial crisis several times over. But how much I have isn't the real question. The real question is what you're willing to do to earn it." Devin shifted uncomfortably. "Ms. Baines," he said carefully, "we don't want charity. We're willing to work, to pay interest, to give collateral. We just need help getting through this." But Jasmine had already lost all restraint. "What do you want from us?" she asked sharply. "What's the price?" Her eyes shone with desperation, and a willingness to cross lines she had never crossed before. This was the moment I had been preparing for. "Jasmine," I said slowly, For years you treated me like I didn't exist. You mocked me, humiliated me, and last week you insulted me in front of 200 people. She flinched. And now, I continued, because you think I have money, suddenly I matter. I'm sorry, Mom, she said quickly. If I could change the past, I would. Please don't let old mistakes ruin our future. Our future? I repeated softly. Or your financial future? The difference mattered. Devon stepped in, trying to calm things. Ms. Baines, Jasmine has been under enormous stress. The financial situation has been overwhelming. It was a kind defense, but naive. Her cruelty hadn't started with money problems. I understand, I said gently. But if I help you, I need guarantees. Jasmine leaned forward eagerly. What kind? We'll sign anything. Accept any condition. Her willingness to agree without understanding told me everything. Very well, I said, standing and walking to my desk. I prepared a proposal. I turned back with a folder in my hands. But before you see it, I said, you need to understand something. What's inside will permanently change our relationship. What kind of change? Devon asked carefully. Jasmine nodded before hearing the answer. The kind, I said, placing the folder on the table, that proves whether you value family or only money. I opened the folder slowly. Inside was a contract that looked completely official, filled with stamps and signatures I had meticulously forged. The title read, Conditional Financial Transfer Agreement, dated 3 days earlier. This, I said, is what I negotiated with my contacts. Jasmine grabbed the document immediately, scanning it line by line. Devon read over her shoulder, growing more alarmed with every sentence. $800,000, Jasmine read aloud. To clear all debts and provide relocation funds. She swallowed. First condition, she continued, her voice shaking slightly. Complete transfer of all current assets as collateral. She looked up. The house, the cars, everything? Temporarily, I said calmly. Until you prove you can manage money responsibly. Devon frowned. That leaves us completely dependent on you. What guarantees do we have? A smart question. Second condition, Jasmine read quickly, ignoring him. Immediate relocation to a city chosen by the lender, with limited family contact for 5 years. Devon went pale. Limited contact, he asked sharply. For 5 years, I explained, you'd live where I decide, in a house I provide, with a monthly stipend I control. Visits and communication would be strictly regulated. Jasmine's hands trembled as she read the next line. Third condition, voluntary renunciation of all future inheritance rights. She looked up slowly. You'd be giving up any future claim on my estate, I confirmed. This would be your only financial benefit from me. Devon stood up abruptly. This isn't help, he said, his voice shaking. This is buying our freedom. Cutting off family ties. But Jasmine barely looked at him. How much is the monthly stipend, she asked. And what kind of house? That contrast told me everything. $4,000 a month, I said. A modest but comfortable home. Jasmine's eyes lit up. Are you really considering this? Devon asked her, stunned. Money in exchange for losing your mother? We're losing everything, she snapped. This is a way out. And after 5 years? Devon asked. We come back as strangers? Our children never know their grandmother? I stepped away, letting them argue. This was the moment their true values surfaced. My relationship with her is already broken, Jasmine said quietly. Maybe this is what I deserve. Families can heal, Devon said firmly. But this isn't healing. It's amputation. He turned to me. This is vengeance, not justice. His words struck deeper than I expected, because he was right. What would you suggest? I asked softly. That we heal without money, he said. That Jasmine earns forgiveness through actions, not contracts. Jasmine stood up, clutching the papers. You don't understand, she cried. This is our only chance. A chance built on destroying family, Devon replied. The room went quiet. I had reached the crossroads. I could let them choose, and watch everything fall apart. Or I could reveal the truth. There is one more condition, I said finally. One that isn't written in the contract. Both of them froze, staring at me. And I knew that whatever I said next would change everything forever. Before you sign anything, I said calmly, before you make any decision, you need to know the full truth about who I really am. Jasmine let the papers slip from her hands onto the table. What truth? She whispered. There's more? For the first time, fear crept into her voice. She finally understood that she had been playing a game she didn't fully understand. The truth, I said, walking toward my desk and pulling out another folder, is that I don't need special contacts to give you that money. The truth is that the document you just read is completely fake. I returned with the real folder. And the truth is this, I continued quietly. Yes, Jasmine. I am exactly who Mr. Sterling thought I was at your wedding. The silence was suffocating. The ticking of the old wall clock sounded deafening. Jasmine and Devon stared at me as if I had just revealed I was someone from another world. And in their minds E.J. Beaumont might as well have been. For the past 30 years, I said, opening the folder, I have built a business empire worth over $200 million. Their faces drained of color. All this time, I added, you were living less than 3 miles away from one of the wealthiest women in the country. This time, the documents were real, bank statements with my full name, corporate ownership certificates, acquisition contracts signed by my own hand, photographs from boardrooms where I was clearly identified as E.J. Beaumont. Jasmine picked up the first paper. Her hands shook so badly she could barely read. Checking account. Eleanor Baines Beaumont, she whispered. Current balance. The paper slipped from her fingers as if it burned her skin. This is real, she said. Devon leaned forward, his face pale. Ms. Baines, Miss Beaumont, he corrected himself. You really are. I am exactly who Mr. Sterling recognized, I said, laying more documents on the table. These are the purchase contracts for his family business. This is my signature. These are the transfer receipts for $45 million. Each document landed like a blow. Jasmine sank onto the sofa, staring helplessly. But you live in that awful apartment, she said weakly. You wear second-hand clothes. You take buses. Why? Why live like that if you're this rich? I sat across from her. After your father died, I said softly, I decided I would never be vulnerable again. I built an empire so strong that no one, not even my own daughter, could ever hurt me financially. I paused. But I also chose to live simply so I would never forget what truly matters. Devon was still staring at the documents in disbelief. These companies. I know them, he said slowly. You own the restaurant chain that saved my cousin's business. You bought the textile factory where my aunt works. He looked up at me, awe in his eyes. You've been saving jobs for years. Not just here, I said quietly. In 12 countries. More than 50,000 people work for companies I rebuilt. It was the first time I had ever spoken about my real life to my family, and it felt strangely freeing. Jasmine finally looked up, tears pouring down her face. 30 years, she whispered. For 30 years I insulted you. I treated you like you didn't exist. Her voice broke completely. And all that time, you were more successful than anyone I've ever known. More successful, I said gently, but apparently not very successful as a mother. The words hurt, but they were true. Devon sat down heavily, covering his face. When I think of the things Jasmine said about you to my family, he said hoarsely. The excuses she made for excluding you. We judged you so harshly. You didn't judge me, I said firmly. I chose that image. I wanted the world to see me that way. Then I added quietly, but every insult, every humiliation, that was Jasmine's choice. Jasmine collapsed forward, sobbing. I'm sorry, she cried. I'm so sorry. There's no way to undo what I've done. You're right, I said calmly. But there are ways to move forward. I stood and returned with another document. This is my real will, I said. Do you want to know what it says? Her eyes widened in panic. Mom, I deserve to be disinherited, she said. I deserve to lose everything. It says, I continued, ignoring her, that 70% of my fortune goes to charities I've secretly funded for years, women's shelters, education programs, scholarships. I paused. The remaining 30% was meant for you and your children. Was? Devon asked quietly. No longer, I said, looking straight at Jasmine. After your wedding, I changed it. 100% now goes to charity. She staggered as if struck. I realized that leaving you money would only confirm your belief that money matters more than relationships. Jasmine stood unsteadily. It's okay, she whispered. You're right. I deserve it. Then her voice broke. Just please, don't cut me out of your life while you're still alive. I don't want the money. I just want to be your daughter. A real daughter? I asked quietly. Like the one who called me a fat ass in front of 200 people? Devon stepped forward, wrapping his arms around her. Miss Beaumont, he said firmly. Jasmine has done terrible things. There's no excuse. But she is your daughter, and you are her mother. He looked at me steadily. And families, even broken ones, deserve the chance to be healed. There has to be some way to heal this, I said honestly. Isn't there? But even as I asked, I wondered how you repair a relationship when one person has spent decades believing that love only exists when it comes with conditions. Jasmine pulled away from Devon and walked toward me. Suddenly, she dropped to her knees in front of my chair. Mom, she said through tears, I know I don't deserve to ask for anything. I know I've been horrible to you for years. But if you give me one chance, just one, I swear I'll spend the rest of my life proving that I can be better. And what about your financial problems? I asked quietly. Do you still expect me to pay your debts? Jasmine and Devon exchanged a long look. I saw a silent decision pass between them. Finally, Devon spoke. Miss Beaumont, we'll handle our problems ourselves. We'll sell everything. We'll move into a small apartment. We'll take any work we can find. We don't want your money. He's right, Jasmine said softly. She sounded different now, humbled, stripped of arrogance. This isn't about money anymore. It's about whether you can ever forgive me. This was the moment I had imagined for years. Yet when it arrived, I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired. Jasmine, I said gently, forgiveness isn't earned in one conversation. It's built through consistent actions, over time. Then tell me what to do, she begged. Tell me where to start. I helped her to her feet. You start by publicly admitting what you did at your wedding, I said. You apologize to everyone who witnessed you humiliating me. And you treat me with respect, not because you now know I have money, but because I am your mother, and I always deserved that respect. She nodded desperately. I will. I promise. I'll do all of it. And I said, gathering the documents and placing them back into the folder, need time. I need to see whether this is real change, or just another performance to get what you want. The truth was, after decades of living behind a false identity, I wasn't even sure who I truly was anymore. Eleanor, the invisible woman, or Beaumont, the ruthless businesswoman. Until I understood that, I couldn't decide what kind of future I wanted with my daughter. 6 months later, everything changed. I stood in front of the mirror in my new apartment, a beautiful penthouse downtown that finally matched my real life. I no longer wore thrift store dresses or took 3 buses to work. My hair was professionally styled. My clothes were elegant, my jewelry simple but refined, For the first time in 30 years, Eleanor Baines and E.J. Beaumont were the same person. The change wasn't easy. For decades, pretending to be poor had been my armor. It protected me from people who loved money more than me. Living openly as a successful woman meant learning a new way to exist, with different expectations, different relationships. Jasmine kept her word in ways I never expected. One week after the truth came out, she organized a dinner for Devon's entire family, including Mr. Sterling and the same 200 guests from the wedding. That night, in front of everyone who had laughed at my humiliation, Jasmine stood and read an apology she had written by hand. 6 months ago, she said, her voice shaking but steady, I publicly humiliated the most important woman in my life. I called my mother a fat ass and laughed as if her pain were entertainment. The restaurant fell silent. What you didn't know, and what I didn't know, she continued, is that my mother is one of the most successful businesswomen in this country. But that isn't what makes my behavior unforgivable. What makes it unforgivable is that she is my mother, and I chose cruelty over love. She cried through the entire speech but didn't stop until she finished every word. Mr. Sterling cried too. He stood and apologized for laughing that night. The mood shifted, from mockery to shame, but that apology was only the beginning. Jasmine and Devon sold their house, their luxury cars, and everything expensive they owned. They moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment in a working-class neighborhood. Both took modest jobs, Jasmine as a receptionist at a medical clinic, Devon as a junior accountant at a small firm. For months, they refused all financial help from me. When I offered to pay their debts, Devon said firmly, Miss Beaumont, we need to prove, to ourselves and to you, that we can be responsible without your money. The first time Jasmine visited my corporate headquarters, she stood outside the 40-story building in awe. She asked me for just one thing. Teach me how you built this, she said. I don't want your money. I want to learn how to create something myself. That became the strangest chapter of my life, teaching my 34-year-old daughter how to be an adult. Our weekly lunches started awkwardly in neutral cafes, then slowly moved to more personal places. She asked questions that broke my heart. How did you choose investments? How did you make decisions without emotion? How did you stay disciplined when results didn't come quickly? That's when I realized something painful. She had never learned those things because I had never taught her. I had been so focused on building my secret empire that I left her emotional and financial education to chance. In many ways, her obsession with money came from growing up around something mysterious, something powerful, unexplained, and untouchable. 4 months after the revelation, Jasmine arrived at lunch with an expression I had never seen before. Pride, not based on possessions. Mom, she said, smiling like the little girl she once was, this month Devon and I paid all our bills without using credit cards. It's the first time that's ever happened. It was a small achievement by most standards, but for Jasmine, it meant everything. Then she took Devon's hand and said, we have something else to tell you. Devon, who now visited me often and had formed a genuine bond with me, squeezed her fingers gently. We're expecting a baby. The words hit me like lightning. I was going to be a grandmother. After years of preparing myself for a lonely old age, the idea of a real family suddenly felt possible again. And what are your plans? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. We want to raise her differently, Jasmine said right away. We want her to know her grandmother from the day she's born. We want her to understand hard work, humility, and that family love is unconditional. That was the moment I finally made a decision I had been putting off for months. There's something I need to tell you, I said, reaching into my purse and pulling out a document I had been carrying with me for weeks. I've been thinking a lot about the future, and about what I want to do with my fortune. Jasmine stiffened instantly. Mom, if this is about inheritance, we already told you, we don't want your money. It's not about inheritance, I said gently. It's about something much more important. I placed the document on the table. This is the charter for the Baines Sterling Family Foundation, I explained. I've decided to convert half of my fortune into a charitable foundation that will be run by future generations of our family. Devon read the paper carefully. What does that actually mean? It means, I said, that when my granddaughter grows up, she'll learn financial responsibility by managing resources that help others. It means Jasmine can build her own career in philanthropy if she chooses. And it means none of you will become rich through inheritance, but you'll always have the chance to make a real difference in the world. Jasmine began to cry, but this time her tears weren't desperate. It's perfect, she whispered. It's exactly what our child needs: purpose without privilege, opportunity without entitlement. Over the next few months, we worked together to design the Foundation's programs. Jasmine showed a natural talent for understanding community needs and creating practical solutions. Devon contributed his financial skills, balancing her passion with structure and discipline. For the first time in decades, I felt like I truly had a family, not flawless, but real. The day my granddaughter, Aaliyah Beaumont Sterling, was born, I held her tiny body in my arms and made a silent promise. She would grow up knowing exactly who her grandmother was, both Eleanor Baines and E.J. Beaumont, from the very beginning. There would be no secrets. No false identities. No shame about success, and no shame about humility. Now, when I look back at that awful night at Jasmine's wedding, when she called me a fat ass in front of 200 people, I can see it for what it truly was. It was the painful spark that made everything else possible. Jasmine had to hit rock bottom to understand what really matters. And I had to risk losing everything to learn what I was truly willing to fight for. As I look toward the future with a hope I hadn't felt in decades, I ask myself this question, and I ask you the same. In your own families, in your own lives, have you had the courage to be completely honest about who you really are? Or are you still hiding parts of yourself out of fear, pride, or self-protection? Because the hardest lesson I learned is this: real love cannot exist where there are deep secrets. And in the end, love, not money, is the only thing that holds us together when everything else falls apart. Thank you for listening to my story. I'd love to know what you thought. Where are you listening from? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if this story touched you, your support means everything. There are more life stories waiting for you. Don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, with love and respect.